Alrighty, so this way the people news one more time at it, y'all. Alright, not attorney, not giving legal advice. Okay, do your own research. Use the Second Amendment. Arm yourself with knowledge. Never look straight forward. Always look around you. Be able to protect yourself by any means necessary. Alright, we the people has got to assemble together, or we're not going to accomplish nothing. Okay, and first thing to do is educate ourselves. So this happens to be traffic law in Texas. And this is what all the cops and magistrates, and if we happen to see judges, have been violating this as well. But that is really hard to do when there's no judge around in the state of Texas. They're all magistrates.
Good morning, friends. This morning, I'm going to show you proof in the law that this corrupt cop is not only ignorant of the law, but a complete embarrassment to the uniform, his department, and the profession in general. Okay, so
again, we're going to pause right there. Just a reminder that when you get these tickets and you actually fight it in court, 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose your case during the beginning to the magistrate due to the black robe ignorance of the law. All right? But he initials it. The officer initials it first. But the magistrate, the lower magistrates, upholds it. And then you go to another case. And then you have to keep fighting it. Government does not like to lose their money. So sometimes they fight to the death.
We're in Texas, and I'm going to show you a document that I first got from the Republic of Texas years ago, somebody in the Republic of Texas, and I altered it a little bit, and we're going to go over the first 3 things today that an officer says to you when you get stopped. I'm going to leave this up on the screen so that you can screenshot it and save a copy of this. At the very top, I do give you the references of.
And you can't really read it because of my internet being slow due to raining in my area. And the internet is so tricky here. Sometimes it's extremely good, sometimes extremely bad.
Where I've gotten these, and I've talked before about going and looking up the statutes and looking at law.cornell.edu, which is an excellent resource. So we're going to look at traffic, and the first 3 things an officer says when he approaches your car is generally, I want your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. So we're going to go over these in the Texas Code and have a look-see. So number 1 is, are you required to have a driver's license when you travel on a public right-of-way? That's the first thing they always ask. And I should mention in this stop, he did write a ticket, although I didn't sign it, and he didn't take me to the magistrate because he told me he had to arrest me. And I wasn't down for being arrested. I was down for going to the magistrate, but I didn't want to be arrested, so he chose not to take me to the magistrate, which was my right to go and to ask. So I didn't sign a ticket, but he wrote one anyway. And one of the things he did write me for was expired driver's license. But let's look and see what the code says. Texas Transportation Code 521.001 definitions. In this chapter, driver's license means an authorization issued by the department for the operation of a motor vehicle. The term includes A, a temporary license or instruction permit, and B, an occupational license. what is an occupational license? Wouldn't that be the same thing as a CDL, a commercial driver's license? So they don't give us any definition for what occupational license means. But anyway, that's all you have is a temporary or instruction and an occupational. And then we have a little bonus for you here. It's Keith Brooks versus the state.
Now, that being said, that is absolutely vague and ambiguous, absolutely. And since it's so vague, the magistrate should have this case dismissed with prejudice because you challenged the word. But since they don't have a direct definition and you bring your own definition in, then they have to go by it.
Which says, and that was the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And it says an information charging the driving of a motor vehicle upon a public highway without a driver's license charges no offense, as there is no such license as a driver's license known to the law. So there's our Texas criminal courts stating that there is no such license as a driver's license known to the law. Then we have Frank Callis versus State. And in this one, it says the court has held there's no such license known to Texas law as a driver's license. So it looks like a terrible conflict here to me. You be the judge on that. Now let's move on to number 2. Are you required to register or accept a certificate of title for your private carriage or your consumer good? A vehicle is, or a carriage or a car or whatever you want to call it, is also named in the code as a consumer good. So if we look under Texas Transportation Code 501.004 under applicability, and this is applicability of the Certificate of Title Act. A says this chapter applies to motor vehicles owned by the state or a political subdivision of the state. This chapter does not apply to a motor vehicle while it is owned or operated by the United States. Texas Transportation Code 502.003, registration by political subdivision prohibited. A political subdivision of this state may not require an owner of a vehicle to, 1, register the vehicle. So no political subdivision, which is going to be your county or any other branch of your state, your DPS, Department of Public Safety, your transportation board, whatever it is in your state. Now, these codes, you can look them up in your state and you're going to have something similar. But let's look at number 2. Number 2, they can't require you to pay a motor vehicle registration fee. Isn't that interesting? And number 3, they can't require you to pay an occupation tax or license fee in connection with a motor vehicle. B. This section does not affect the authority of a municipality to license and regulate the use of motor vehicles for compensation within the municipal limits. Okay, so if you're using your vehicle for compensation, in other words, for hire, then you would be operating, I suppose, under an occupational or CDL license, and of course, you would be subject to some regulations. So now let's look at number 3. Do I have to provide proof of insurance at a traffic stop? Well, that one's a maybe. It depends on whether you have an accident or not, because Texas Transportation Code 601.292 provides duty to provide evidence of financial responsibility to investigating officer. A person whom this subchapter applies shall provide evidence of financial responsibility to a law enforcement officer of this state or a political subdivision of this state who is conducting an investigation of the accident. So there had to be an accident, at which time you would need to provide financial proof of responsibility. Texas Transportation Code 601.293, failure to provide evidence of financial responsibility. Magistrates in.
Now, again, I'm not an attorney, not giving legal advice. Now, since the people owning the said cars and trucks and all that, they're still making a claim that you actually have to enter a contract. Well, government still cannot force you to enter any contract. Okay? So, even saying that you have to show evidence that your financial responsibility and all that kind of stuff, well, in order to get insurance, you're forced into a contract with another business. The state can't do that. That's Hale versus Hinkle. Okay? And if it's contrary to the Constitution, Marbury versus Madison. All right? So that one, I could see how she's a little itchy on that. But moreover, enforcement of contract of any sorts is still enforcement of contract, and nor state or federal government can force you into any contract. Period. Now, back in the old days, in common law, even today, you would send money to the commissioner of the state, just in case there was an accident, and they hold basically a bond, just in case you did get in an accident. But that's what their job was for in that instant, right? So, and I believe common law was $15,000. So you give them $15,000, you're covered. As long as you never had an accident that was your fault and all that, that bond's been put up, and you never had to have insurance.
Query
And the reason why that was, it was still what? Because the state can't force you into contract.
order. A person to whom this subchapter applies who fails to provide evidence under section 601.292. Now that's the code we just read, where you have to provide evidence after an accident. So a person who fails to provide that evidence under section 601.292 shall be taken before a magistrate as soon as practicable. B. The magistrate shall conduct an inquiry on the issues of negligence and liability for bodily injury, death, or property damage sustained in the accident. C. If the magistrate determines that there is a reasonable probability that a judgment will be rendered against the person for bodily injury, death, or property damage sustained in the accident, the magistrate shall order the person to provide 1. Evidence of financial responsibility for the bodily injury, death, or property damage, or 2. Evidence that the person is exempt from the requirement under 601.051. And
now I'm going to pause there again, right? For argument's sake, freedom is scary, y'all. There's going to be a catch-22, and there's going to be a caveat on all this, right? It's going to be a damned if you do, damned if you don't. Okay? So understand. But I also found the fathers kind of said, look, you give up uh, if you go ahead and accept safety over freedom, then you don't deserve either one. All right. And again, they're trying to force you into contract. And now they're telling you, well, they're telling the officer to get evidence. But there we go again. I do not have to compel to give evidence against myself. Just saying.
D. A determination of negligence or liability under subsection C does not act as collateral estoppel on an issue in a criminal or civil adjudication arising from the accident. So, right there, right off the bat, 1, 2, 3, driver's license, registration, and insurance not required. Now, in our next video, we're going to get on to what he calls probable cause and what.
So, that being said, y'all, I understand how we can look at it because as for my family being out on the highway, I kind of want people with insurance. Uh, that way I'm not stuck footing in the bill and all that kind of stuff. So I do understand of some of y'all's arguments out there. Okay? And again, what's the insurance do? They keep fighting people and say, we're not going to pay this. Boo-hoo-hoo. Wah. Right? And that's what the city insurance say gives people cop cars running into your family member by going chasing a dog running down the street. Oh, we're not going to pay for our officer crashing in your cars and your children is having medical bills and all that kind of stuff in the hospital. We're not going to pay for that. Oh, but we are supposed to do it? All right. So, again, I understand some of you guys' argument on this, and it's a tricky thing. But we also got to always remind ourselves you can't have security